So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Tonight, we have a very exciting expert series lined up. We have our community partners, Dufferin Child and Family Services, as well as DCAP, as well as Family Transition Place here to share about some of their amazing programs and services and support that is available to our community. And of course, how we can get in touch to access these services. So stay tuned. It's going to be a jam-packed session. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Alethia O'Hara Stephenson, President and founder of the Dufferin County Canadian Black Association, an organization that was established to lead, advocate, educate, and empower our Black community in Dufferin County. We do have a strong focus on our youth, including youth achievement and excellence. And so this conversation is very fitting because it focuses on the entire community, not just our young people, but the community as a whole. Before we get into tonight's presentation, I'd like to do a little bit of housekeeping. We're going to go through two presentations tonight. The first half will be with FTP, followed by DCAF. If you have any questions and you're not comfortable asking them publicly, please feel free to send those questions to me directly, and I will moderate the session and make sure that our speakers have a chance to answer those questions for you. If there are any questions that are too sensitive, of course, we can make sure that we get you those answers offline as well. So no worries at all. It's a safe space. If you don't want to be on camera, that is totally fine as well. We are recording the session, so I totally understand if you don't want to be on camera. But again, feel free to ask any questions as we go along. So without further delay, it is my honor to introduce our speakers tonight. And I'm going to invite them to share their full bio because I'm afraid I'm not going to give them justice with just a little snippet of information that I'm going to share. So Barb Mason is a sexual violence, I believe, director at Family Transition Place, and she has done a lot of community work providing presentations to various organizations in Dufferin County. We also have Lynette Poole, who's joining us as well tonight, and I'll have Barb do a bit of introduction on Lynette. We also have Jennifer Moore from Dufferin Child and Family Services. Jennifer is another amazing community champion and advocate, and both Jennifer and Barb has had to listen to me when I talk about the impact, especially when it comes to our Black communities in Dufferin County and some of the needs and services that needs to be filled. But Jennifer has an extensive resume as well, working with our community, and she is the Chief Executive Officer of Dufferin Child and Family Services. So I am extremely honored that these two organizations have said yes to support DCCBA on our mission to educate and empower our community. So without further delay, please join me in welcoming Barb to Zoom. Welcome, Barb.
Thank you so much, Alethia. What a great opening there. So I just did want to introduce Lynette. Lynette, maybe you want to take it away and share who you are and what your role is at FTP.
Sure. So I'm happy to be here with all of you. My name is Lynette Poe-Langdon, and I'm the Director of Counseling, Education, and Community Mental Health Initiatives with FTP. I've been with the organization for quite a few years. I started as a frontline clinical counselor and then have moved into this role now. So I'm super excited to be here. And really, Barb is our facilitator. So I'm here to support Barb, and I will add snippets to the presentation, but I'll let Barb take it away. And just really wanted to be here to really solidify FTP's commitment to really building bridges and wanting to work alongside our Black community and really trying to make inroads and making our agency hopefully feel accessible to everyone in our community. So I'll let you take it away, Barb, and I'll just be here to support you, and I'll add in as needed.
Sounds good. So let me just share my screen so we can get started. Get rid of that. Everybody can see my screen? Yep, perfect. Okay, so let's dig right in. We don't have a whole lot of time together this evening, so I don't want to spend a whole lot of time talking about myself or getting more into the bio stuff, but I really want to take the opportunity to thank Alethia for the opportunity this evening, putting together this event, allowing us to have this space and time to really be able to connect with folks in the community and to share about what do we do at FTP. So I haven't been at the agency for very long. I actually started in this role back in December, just before the holiday season, and it was a new position. So because it was a new position and a new part of what we were doing at FTP, I did what's called a gap analysis. So I wanted to connect with folks in the community to ask, what are we doing really well? And what could we work on? And what needs to happen? And so through that gap analysis, we were able to identify that there are certain areas that we do need to focus on more. And one of those pieces was making sure that we're engaging our Black community in conversations and making sure that our work is accessible and our support is accessible for everyone. So Alethia and I have had a few conversations because she was one of the individuals that I reached out to connect with to talk about what's happening in the community and really to create a collaborative approach to moving forward and making sure that everyone in our community feels that they can access our support. Before I move on, though, I just did want to acknowledge the land that we're coming to from this evening. So in the spirit of truth and reconciliation, I would like to acknowledge that Family Transition Place is located on the ancestral territories of the Mississaugas of the New Credit in the region of Ojibwe and the nation of the Anishinaabe. That is a condensed version, but you can find our complete version on our website at familytransitionplace.ca. So before sort of getting into the nuts and bolts of all the different supports and services that we have at Family Transition Place, I thought it would be super important for folks to really understand what the underpinnings of our work is. So these things are focused really on our vision and our mission statements. And these are the statements that we uphold in all of the work that we do. So I wanted to share those with you. So our vision is a community free of abuse where all individuals are treated with compassion, equity, and respect, and live their lives in healthy relationships. And to give you a bit of a background, Family Transition Place has been operating in our community, both Dufferin County and Caledon, since 1984. And all of the services that you're going to hear about tonight are offered free of charge and for folks who are age 16 and over. But we'll get into that a little bit more. Also wanted to make sure that I got in there, because I sometimes forget this piece, that we have 3 locations. So our primary office, our main office is in Orangeville, which is also where our shelter is located. But we also have a space in Shelburne as well as Bolton. So our mission statement is to support the holistic well-being of those affected by gender-based violence and promote healthy relationships and community through education. And in doing that, we commit to providing safety. So creating safe, welcoming, and inclusive spaces for all of our community members, providing support that is respectful, compassionate, and providing counseling that makes sense, that fits well into the community, and that is supportive of all. And we hope to inspire hope. So we advocate for systemic change. We're always learning and innovating to create positive impacts on the lives of our diverse individuals that we serve. So Family Transition Place is also committed to unlearning the biases and working towards undoing systemic racism and oppression towards Black, Indigenous, people of color, 2S LGBTQ+, and all marginalized identities. But we want to acknowledge that we can't just do this work through education alone. We are not looking at this work of diversity, inclusion, and equity as being sort of a tick box that we have addressed and we can move on from. We recognize that this work, this journey that we're on, is a journey. It's started and we're excited about that, but we have a long way to go. And I think that learning will never end. Like we all, no matter what stage along our journey we're at, we all can continue to learn. And so what we're doing at Family Transition Place is working on identifying structural and organizational issues that might be enabling racism, inequality, so that we can make the required structural changes and practices required to achieve racial equity. And part of this work also is ensuring that the folks that are our governing body are also coming along this journey with us. A lot of this work comes from the top down. So our board has actually done a statement of intent around belonging, dignity, and justice. And they're creating a statement currently of intent concerning their commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion at the board level, which is super important. This statement mirrors the work that we do at Family Transition Place, so our vision, mission, and values, and it will become a very integral part of the board's orientation process. Some of the key elements are that the board wants to ensure that we seek diversity to create dignity, that we encourage equity work to ensure justice, and we foster inclusion to ensure belonging. And I wanted to share this photo because I was always thinking about this time that we have together this evening. I was doing some work in my garden. That's when I usually do my best thinking, when I'm digging in the earth and just getting out there. And I was thinking about planting seeds and how growth is always just it's a great thing to go back to and to think about in terms of journeys, right? And so I was thinking about, that we've planted this seed at our agency, which is really around that we have to do better in terms of our work, in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we are on the path to that. But I was thinking about how much sense it makes to think of planting a seed, and that seed is in the ground, and then you sit and you wait. And you look at the soil and you're thinking, what the heck? There's nothing happening. But really, truly, there is a lot happening. It's just happening under the surface where folks don't see it. So I see that very similar to the work that we're doing at Family Transition Place in terms of our DEI work, in that we've planted the seed, we're doing the work. There's a lot going on beneath the surface that folks may not see, but I want you to know that it's happening and that we're on that journey. And, there's a lot of courage and strengths and difficult conversations that are happening that are contributing to our growth. I just wanted to share that.
Can I jump in for a minute, Barb, if you don't mind?
Absolutely. Please do.
Just to give you some context around some of the conversations that we've had over the past year. We've had, we brought in Anne-Marie Schroeder, I believe is her last name, and she did some really great training with our agency. And it was good because she gave everybody homework. So we were all people had to make time to really start to look at themselves and look at our biases and start to be aware and increase, our learnings. And so it was interesting because it was after one of our sessions, we had a woman call our crisis line, and she asked to work with a Black counselor. And so we took that back to our counseling team, and we asked our colleagues who live in Black bodies what that feels like for them. Like, were they okay with that? Is that something that they would want? And because wanted to kind of explore that and just to see what that felt like for them. And it was a really interesting conversation. And it was a great conversation because we talked about how we all come from different social locations. We have different levels of privilege. We had different experiences. And for someone coming to our service, depending on their background, depending on what their social location is, it could mean a lot to them to be able to sit across from someone that they feel might mirror their social location more. So it was a really great, rich conversation. And so it's just one of the examples. I know also at a leadership level, we've talked about, how do we really entice and recruit new staff that want to come to our agency that come from diverse backgrounds. And we have our DEI statement that goes on all our job postings, and to hopefully have a feeling that we're an agency that's welcoming and whatnot. But we've also had further conversations, and it's funny because many, many years ago, there was a bit of a feeling that you hire for fit and then train for skill, train what people need to actually do their jobs. But it's funny because we've started to have some real rich conversations around what does fit mean? Mm-hmm. And sometimes fit means hiring people that look like you. Sometimes fit means hiring someone that has had similar experiences. And that's not what we want. That's not us going forward being diverse and being rich in terms of all our experiences and all the different backgrounds that we can bring. So I just wanted to share those two pieces because I think just to give you some context, it's important to say we've done training, but just want to kind of share and reiterate that we're working and it's going a bit deeper, and we're we're having some really rich conversations. Sorry, Barb.
No, absolutely. That's why you're here. You give me a break. It's awesome. And so, you know, it even goes deeper than that, really having a good hard look at what our marketing materials look like, you know, looking at them through a different lens, even our education pieces, ensuring that we're building DEI into that and that we're having second set of eyes look at things and really starting to question. So why are we landing on this photo and not that one? Or why are we doing the things that we're doing, and having much more dialogue around things, which is amazing. So I'm going to jump in now into sharing what do we do at Family Transition Place. So when I did that gap analysis, I was kind of surprised to hear that a lot of folks in the community really didn't know what we did. In fact, most people, a lot of folks felt like we were just a shelter for women. So we are a shelter for women, but we are certainly much more than that. So I'm going to share now. I'm going to go pretty quickly through these, just recognizing the time. So we have a youth education program that is offered from grades 5 till 8. We have 2 amazing youth educators who bring a lot of energy, a lot of spark to classrooms. I'm going to just break down what each sort of grade or what they work through. So grade 5, they talk about stereotype busters. So this program explores the link between stereotypes, discrimination, intolerance, and bullying. Students learn and practice skills to facilitate behavior change. And I've been able to have the ability to sit in on some of these sessions, and also my kids have been lucky enough to be able to be exposed to many of these sessions as they've gone through these grades. And I can just tell you that Travis and Sabina, our youth educators, create such a great relationship with the students in the classroom, but they also create this energy. And, you know, it's been a tough few years for our kids. And to see them be able to like really engage and come to life through these conversations where, you know, maybe they don't even realize that they're learning super important things, but they are by playing games and by doing competitive things that gets everybody sort of up and moving and part of the conversation. So grade 6, the program is called Inspire. Students explore and practice the use of empathy to build healthy relationships. Students examine key issues that empathetic behavior can assist with, including divorce, death, and bullying. And again, all of these sessions, all these grades and these programs are held through 8 sessions, which is super important because our youth educators are able to build relationships with the classrooms and with the educators as well. Grade 7, the session is called Power. This program promotes personal safety through development of healthy relationships. Students learn to build and maintain healthy relationships through effective communication, emotional self-regulation, and the safe use of communication technology. And in grade 8, the program is called I Am. And this program examines the importance of having a positive personal image through the use of self-esteem building activities. And I actually sat in on one of these sessions, and I can tell you how wonderful it was to be able to listen to what students had to say about each other. So they were tasked with the tour of sort of writing down different things about how they felt about people in their classroom. And those were read out loud by the facilitators. And so how wonderful was it for the kids in the class to be able to read all these wonderful positive things that people felt about them, but oftentimes just didn't share. You know, those aren't conversations that you typically just have in grade 8 with each other, and people are feeling awkward, and, you know, there's a new year ahead. So what a great program these are. So we also provide women abuse counseling, so exploring positive ways to overcome abuse-related trauma, to develop healthy coping strategies. Sessions are 50 minutes in length, and they can be held in person or virtually. Sometimes they're even held over the phone. Really, our counselors are super great at making sure that folks are able to receive the counseling they need in a place and in a way that makes most sense for them and makes them most comfortable. So we have support related to intimate partner violence and historical childhood abuse, and also counseling groups are available. This is super exciting for me because I am the sexual violence community engagement facilitator. So I'm very excited to present the Lotus Center, the Sexual Violence Counseling and Support New branding of Family Transition Place. The Lotus Center is part of Family Transition Place, but it focuses on our sexual violence work that we're doing in the community. And this has all been able to happen through funding that we received from the Ministry of the Attorney General back in the fall. That has allowed our agency to really focus on providing more supports and services related to sexual violence. So there was an understanding that we have had limited resources and supports in our community, and especially considering that we serve a large rural population, recognizing that there are challenges and barriers to working with folks who are in rural communities. So this funding has allowed us to create the Lotus Center and also more expanded services for folks in our community. So funded to provide women abuse and sexual assault counseling to the community. We've always had this service, but now we've just been able to expand what we can offer. So we've added a mobile crisis counselor. So that worker, whose name is Donna, she can actually make herself available and head out into the community and attend when there's a situation in the community. I know that she's been able to head to schools when there's been some concerns, and really been a great advocate in terms of not only the work that we can do at Family Transition Place, but connecting individuals with all of our community partners services throughout the county that people can access. We also hired 2 additional clinical counselors, and they also, which this is new and very exciting and super important, that they can provide now support to family, friends, and partners of survivors. So historically, we really focused on providing support to the survivor, but we acknowledge that the support network of the survivor is great, and they really need the support of not just counselors who they visit once a week, talk to once a week, people who can stand by them and to provide support when they're not in those counseling sessions. So now we're able to provide support to family, friends, and survivors, partners of survivors, to really have an opportunity for them to talk about how are they feeling through helping a loved one through the process, and what does that feel like for them, and is this normal what they're experiencing, or what are some ways that they can provide different kinds of support that they haven't thought of on their own. So having that piece of the work is critical to ensuring that our survivors are continuing on a healthy path and a healthy journey to recovery. And I'm also working on a peer support model program. So we're hoping to roll that out in the fall. And I'm not exactly sure what that is exactly going to look like at this point, but we are having conversations around making sure that we do have a support model, recognizing it's needed in our community. Folks having a place to come and share their experiences with people who have similar lived experience is something super powerful. We can never replicate that through time spent with a counselor. That connection to people who have walked in your shoes, who've had something similar happen to them, is so critical. And the healing that comes along with that is very powerful. So we're really looking forward to, it's in the works. There's work happening in the background, but hopefully by fall, we'll see the rollout of some of those programs. And then there was the addition of my position, which is the community engagement facilitator, and also working on the peer support work. So it's been a big year for Family Transition Place in terms of growth. We've seen a great increase in staff numbers. And as folks like to say, we're called Family Transition Place, and we're always in a way of transition. We're always transitioning into something, but it's wonderful. So sexual violence counseling is client-centered counseling for any survivor of sexual violence. So that includes males and those who identify as males, which is unique because in many of our other programs, they're just offered to women who are 16 years of age and up, but our sexual violence counseling can be accessed by males as well. And not only for recent sexual violence, but also to talk about maybe there's historical situations that folks just haven't been able to work through that we can help with. As I already said, counseling services for family, friends, and partners, and therapeutic group counseling. And I love to share this quote because it's part of why we landed on the Lotus Center for the Sexual Violence Center, is this: just like the lotus, we too have the ability to rise from the mud, bloom out of darkness, and radiate into the world. So there's my role again, sexual violence community engagement, which we've talked about. So I'm doing a lot of work in the community, trying to be really creative in terms of who I'm reaching out to, and recognizing that this work of prevention, which is I feel like what my role really is making sure folks know what sexual violence is, so folks know what consent is, and that we can't do this work of prevention alone, that it takes a community effort, and that we're not working in silos, that we have to collaborate with folks in our community and create opportunities to share information to make sure that we are creating a community that is safe and free from violence. So we also offer addiction services, support for women in lessening the consequences of substance use through counseling, and provide substance use education, safety planning, and appropriate community referrals. I also know that our addiction worker, Allison, has been actually at the high school in Shelburne. She did some education there with folks, so that's amazing. We also have the rural response program. So they provide, there's 2 workers, and they work out of our Shelburne office, and they provide support to folks living in rural Dufferin County. They're mobile, so they can meet you where you're at. If there's someone who needs support who's living remotely in the country and doesn't have a way to get in to have a meeting, or doesn't have technology where they can meet via Zoom, then these workers are more than capable of getting out there and having conversations wherever it is safe for the client. So we also provide housing, legal, and transitional support. So support is available through Caledon and Dufferin to women who experience any form of abuse or are experiencing housing instability. Information and support on housing resources is offered. Strategies to maintain housing, and information and support to navigate the family and criminal system is also provided. Support within housing is staff work really closely with women who've experienced trauma due to abuse and who are also managing moderate to severe mental wellness issues. And we have the integrated crisis support. So the mobile crisis counselor I spoke about a little bit earlier, she also attends calls in the community with our community partners. So oftentimes I know she's chatting with folks from OPP who might need support and really want to bring someone alongside them who can provide more of the emotional piece and referrals for support, as opposed to just potentially investigating a situation. And so they go to a lot of calls, mental health cases, it could be sexual violence, domestic violence, all kinds of situations. And we also have parent and child support. So this is brief counseling available 6 to 8 sessions for youth and children who've been impacted by witnessing domestic violence. And collaborative support is available to mothers as they support their children. And group counseling is also available. And one of their programs we offer as well is Caring Dads program. And of course, we have the emergency shelter, which is a safe and comfortable place for women to stay for their children. They have their own self-contained units. These units, we did some transitioning through the pandemic and had some construction so that women and their children could have access to their own washroom, bathroom facilities, their own little kitchenette. So basically they're self-contained little apartments where women and children can be and receive support that they need. Food and the essentials are provided. And also we have a 24-hour crisis support line. So at any time, folks can call in to Family Transition Place and they will be able to connect with someone who can provide immediate support and also offer resources and support to our community. And then I just provided information. Alethia, I'll send this presentation to you so you can also have it if folks want it just digitally. And I also put some information about our community partners who we work. This work, again, isn't done in isolation. The great work that folks are doing in the community is because we all work together. We all recognize the challenges and we all are in it together, and we try really hard to work with each other, helping our community.
It's actually quite fitting that FTP and DCAPS are presenting, I think, on the same night, because our agencies really, really collaborate on a lot of different service delivery. DCAPS does all the, which Jen will talk about. I won't steal your thunder, Jen, but in terms of our sexual violence work, like we work very closely with DCAPS. they're a funded stream of the sexual violence work in the community. Headwaters does the forensic medical piece. DCAFS and FTP run Caring Dads together. So it's actually quite neat that we're on the same night presenting. So
thank you for that, Barb and Lynette. And yes, it was strategically planned. So
well done.
Through the many conversations, it just made sense to have both on at the same night. Before I turn it over to Jen, let me just check the chat to see if there are any questions. Are there any questions from anyone on the line before I throw my one question in?
If I may, I'll just make a comment very briefly. I know that time is of the essence, but I'll simply just say that I love the collaboration amongst the different organizations working together, as we repeatedly heard. I think that makes a lot of sense. And for me, it was great to hear these services that are available. When I moved here, I didn't, well, at least I wasn't aware of many of the services. And so having this platform and being told or advised of the services is really, really cool. The other thing I want to point out is I found it really moving to hear the comment about somebody calling in and saying that they wanted to speak to a Black counselor. That's pretty significant. And it just really speaks to how intentional we have to be to make sure that we are not only providing services, but the services that people actually want to use and feel that they need. And one of the things that I want to compare it to, and I'll end on this note, is, for example, once upon a time, the attitude was, we're providing services and you should be happy that you're getting these services. And I think about the food bank. Like, you come to the food bank, you need food, you should be happy we're giving you food. But I'm glad to see they've moved away from that model. And it's not just about, we're giving you food, don't complain about it. It's, what could we do to make sure that we are properly servicing the diverse needs of the people who are accessing our services. And so if it means that I have to get halal food instead of giving something else, then that's what I'll do, because the demographics and the needs are different. And so these collaboration opportunities ensure that the work is being done and the proper steps are being taken to, again, address those needs. So I just wanted to thank everybody involved in doing the work. So to your point, it may not be seen by everybody, but I'm happy to hear that it's being done. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deputy Mayor Anderson, for your comments. In the essence of time, perhaps I'll hand it over to Jen, and then any questions that come up, we can take them all up at the end.
Hey, hello, everybody. And I'm just going to start sharing my screen now. I hope you can see it.
Yeah, we're good.
Perfect. All right. So thank you for having me as well. I really appreciate being able to be here tonight. And Barb, you did a fantastic job in talking about family transition place. I do want to underscore the comments about community partnerships, and Steve, you were talking about that as well. It is the only way in small communities that we can survive and make sure that we're able to actually provide for our communities in a way that's really effective, as if we're working together in a really good way, in a good place. So I wanted to just underscore that. It's actually a huge underpinning of all the work that we do. With DCAFS, I structured our presentation a little bit differently. I actually started with the services that we're offering, and then what I wanted to do was talk about our internal equity plan, as well as the underpinnings of our new strategic plan that we're going to be launching in September. I thought those things might be of interest to the group, and certainly happy to answer any questions as well, either along the way or at the end, whatever works best for folks. And I will include some contact information as well, so people know how to connect with us at the end. So I wanted to start just by talking about the organization in general. We're fairly unique in the province of Ontario. Typically, in any given community, you would have a mental health, a child and youth mental health organization, as well as a developmental support organization and a child welfare organization, all functioning as separate entities. Back in 1978, a predecessor of mine had the wisdom to put all of the services under one roof, but not as a co-location, as a truly integrated multi-service organization. And the intentionality behind that was because we didn't want families to end up getting to a place where they're feeling in crisis, where there's all kinds of risk and they're needing to access child protection services, for example. We wanted instead to be able to offer as much prevention and support at the front door as we could. And we wanted to make sure that whoever was answering our phones and taking initial calls from the community, whether it be from community members or people who make referrals to our organization, have a mindset of a real strengths-based perspective and are looking at ways that we can be providing good supports in the community. So I wanted to start with our mental health service. And I'm not going to go through every single program that we have. I don't have them all listed in this presentation. We have about 26 different programs, but I wanted to hit on a few of the salient points that I thought folks might be most interested in. So first off, we do offer crisis services for everybody under 18 in Dufferin County. And we work in partnership primarily with Headwaters Healthcare Centers. So we do all of the crisis assessments in the emergency department at Headwaters for anybody under 18. And then we also work as well with other community partners, as both Barb and Lynette were explaining, in terms of the FTP crisis worker, CMHA, DOPP, and more. So those services are delivered primarily in the hospital, although also in family homes as well as in schools. And to be really honest with you, sometimes on the side of the road, we've had phone calls from people who have said, we really just need you right now. And our staff have literally met people on the side of the road whenever they've just really needed them. We also have a talk-in clinic, and that's the main gateway to access mental health services. So we offer that on Wednesdays. There's detailed info on our website, which I will post at the end. And what the premise of this is, it's something we're really excited about. We were the second organization in the province of Ontario to offer this about 12 years ago. We had ridiculous wait lists, 18 months to get in to see a clinician, which is no good, because who's not in crisis by the time 18 months has passed if you're dealing with a situation. So we shifted things up. And what we found through our talking clinic is that about 66% of the people who come and access services, once they've had that opportunity to just connect with the clinician that one time, they're offered up, some skills and tools, offer the opportunity to reflect on what the pressing issue is for them in the moment. And most people find that to be kind of enough, or at least enough for the moment. So people will leave, they will practice whatever new skills they may have been given. And if they need to come back a month later, a week later, a year later, they're always welcome to come back. Of course, we do have some folks that have more intense types of needs that require some further supports. So we have a child and family therapy program, and we have a brief program that involves about 4 to 6 sessions. And we know through research that about 4 to 6 sessions is really kind of a max for most people, so that they again can take away what they've learned and put some of that into practice. Again, always welcome to come back. We, of course, serve folks who have higher needs on the spectrum of mental health, and they might be involved in more ongoing supports and even some intensive level support. So I'll give you an example of that. We find that, some families might struggle with a particular time of day. For example, really getting their kids off to school in the morning is a real struggle, because a child may have anxiety or other issues that are getting in the way of them being able to get themselves kind of going in the morning. So we have staff who actually go in and do more sort of hand-over-hand work and some modeling within a family home to help to create some of that structure and work through some of the mental health issues that the child or youth might be facing or struggling with, in order to reduce some of the barriers and help them get on with sort of the routines of their day that is going to make life a little bit easier for everybody in the family. We also have that sexual assault therapy, and a component of that is what Lynette and Barb were talking about. We partners with the Lotus Center and with Headwaters Healthcare Center as well in delivering sexual assault therapy. And I would just say that this has really shifted a lot over the years. Certainly, we have a high focus on human trafficking. We have a high focus on online sexual interference types of activities. Things that kids, children and youth are facing, issues that would be connected with things like sexting and online bullying, where they're receiving threats and so on. We've really seen a shift in what people are looking for in terms of sexual assault supports over the years. And it's not even always called sexual assault anymore whenever we're getting calls, about this kind of thing. We have an eating disorders bridging program as well that we run in partnership with the Dufferin area family health team, and that's intended to provide some supports while people are waiting in the community to access hospital-based supports for eating disorders. And we also have a GLOW program. So this is a 2S LGBTQ youth group that we've been running for 27 years now. We actually have 2 groups separated into age ranges, and it's called GLOW, and the kids named it. It's gay, lesbian, or whatever. And it happens at our office once a week. We typically serve, close to 200 kids a year in this group. And I will say it's one of the programs that we've seen real tangible outcomes with, because this is a very at-risk group of youth, and the connections have made a really big difference for them in their own words. So I do want to say, with our talking clinic, we only offer it Wednesdays now, and it is in Orangeville right now. However, we did offer it prior to COVID through the Dufferin area, the Dufferin Wellness Clinic that Dr. Catania and her team is out of. And we actually partnered with FTP on that as well, so that we could have a whole family kind of support response. And hopefully we can get back into doing that eventually. But we're also starting an internship program. And we're going to be able to expand our talk-in hours and have it essentially run through interns that are supervised by a registered psychotherapist, and hopefully be able to offer that in more locations as well as more days of the week. I'd say all of our mental health services are delivered all over the place. So our primary office is in Orangeville, 655 Riddell, but our clinicians are in the schools, they're in the communities, they're at Tim Hortons, they're all over the place. And that is just, we want to make sure that we can meet people's needs where they're at. I also wanted to say that our mental health clinicians, all of them have specialization in trauma therapy. However, an area that we need to build upon is with respect to having a racial trauma focus. And I've been working closely with Alethia, who's an awesome partner to work with. And we are hoping to be able to make a few announcements soon on some partnerships that we may have in this regard, that we do have actually in this regard. So stay tuned for some excitement in that way. We have developmental support services as well. So we have a wide range of autism services. We are the Ontario autism provider in the community. And what that means is that we've got a lot of different behavioral supports. We have urgent response programs. We've got an entry to school program for young ones who are on the spectrum, who need some transition supports to get into the school system, and a whole wide variety of other services as well. One thing I do want to highlight through our autism services is something called foundational family supports, and you can find all this info on our website. It is essentially, science-based behavioral supports that are applicable to everybody. You do not have to be on the spectrum, on the autism spectrum, all ages, all developmental levels, cognitive levels, et cetera. And essentially what it is, it's a way to, it's a really methodical way to help to address any behaviors that are getting in the way of a child's development or causing other issues, social and otherwise. So I'd encourage everybody, it's online, it's easy to access, to check that out if you have any questions around your child's development and any behaviors that you're having a difficult time dealing with. We also have an infant and child development program. So that's basically doing assessment and support whenever a young one is either born with some developmental delays or maybe at risk of developmental delays or experiencing some challenges in terms of typical development. We have an inclusion program that we run in licensed childcare and camp settings. And that is really to try and ensure that children with a wide variety of needs are truly included in programming. So it's not a staff person supporting one child, for example. It really is about building an environment that is inclusive. We have a fetal alcohol spectrum disorder program, complex special needs supports, and service coordination. And I know given the time, I could talk forever and a day about all of these, but I know you've already been listening super patiently, and I don't want to take up too much of your time on the semantics, because you can look at it all online too, and always reach out with any questions. We also are the designated Children's Aid Society under the Child Youth and Family Services Act in Dufferin County. So I do want to speak a little bit about this, because it's a system that has definitely seen an overrepresentation of Indigenous and Black children, youth, and families over the years. I want to acknowledge that. And there is a lot of work that is being done with respect to changing that landscape and doing what we can to shift that around as a system. I will say, I looked just at the end of the day today before this presentation. At this point in time in our Child Protection Service, 6.4% of the families who we're working with identify as Black. I thought that might be of interest. And unfortunately, there isn't identity-based data that's been released yet through Canada Census that we can really understand what that looks like in terms of overrepresentation in our community. In terms of recent numbers, we have certainly old data. But regardless of what it looks like here, it's high across the whole province of Ontario, and that is a reality, and it's something that needs to change in a big way. We do have a real strengths-based focus with our Child Protection Service, and 98.5% of all families we work with in child protection all remain together through all of our work together. So I wanted to kind of state that too, because one of the myths about child welfare and child protection is that it's all about apprehending kids. And there are some circumstances where that happens. That is true, but it's extremely rare. And when it does happen, then the first thing that we do is seek family, friends, neighbors, somebody that the child's familiar with to help provide some temporary care until we can work to reduce some of the risks within the home alongside the family. Child welfare is actually undergoing a redesign provincially, and I thought I would share the pillars of that redesign because they may be of interest to some folks. Basically, it is about ensuring that there's community-based prevention services that are available, increasing youth supports, developing lifelong stable connections, improving quality of care and accountability. And as a multi-service agency, the way that we're structured now, I think we have the opportunity to really take advantage of this redesign and leverage a lot of our prevention and clinical services to make sure that we're very well aligned with these pillars of redesign. So I wanted to talk a little bit as well about equity and reconciliation in our organization and what that looks like. And I thought it might be of interest to show sort of over the years a few different things that we have done and some of the pathways that we have taken. So we started back in 2006 really with looking at particularly the 2S LGBTQ community as well as poverty and inclusion. And we moved along kind of our pathway. We were able to get a grant that helped us hire a diversity coordinator, and we were able to launch a number of activities that you can see here between 2009 and 12. And we were really happy to be part of launching the Human Living Library in Dufferin. It was actually part of the Celebrate Your Awesome event again this year. We struck our internal diversity committee and a number of other activities. And then from 2014 to about 2018, some of the activities, again, this isn't everything, but it's a bit of a snapshot. We had focused series of education sessions by Jean Samuel on equity and anti-Black racism. We engaged in policy review, many Indigenous teachings, transgender education sessions. We joined the Anti-Oppressive Roundtable in the province, and we did PMP review from policy and procedure review from an equity lens. And then we also launched a strat plan at that point in time that did have an equity focus as well. And then from 2019 to 20, we really focused on a refresh of what we were doing internally and focused more on talking about the realities of anti-Black racism, the impact of whiteness and white supremacy on the work that we do and our internal environment as an organization. We launched Collective Voices for Equity, which are monthly, not just education sessions, because again, I just said earlier, This isn't our work around equity is not about training. It's really about understanding and taking time for personal development and personal reflection. And then in 2021, we developed an internal equity plan, which I will share with you. We had our Black History Month committee formed, and then we also made a change to our performance evaluations for all staff, and we made it a requirement that regardless of your position, you need to include an equity-related goal. And in our first year, we made it specific to the recommendations with respect to truth and reconciliation. And so that launched in September, and we will have people review those goals and their accomplishments. And then there will be another focus with respect to equity this upcoming year. So that was actually a really powerful, tangible thing to do. And we had people, you know, who were in our finance department who might be in charge of our buildings and so on, creating goals. And it really forced people to think about their own personal impact and their own personal growth. And then in 2022, we began developing our new strat plan, and you will see our strategic pillars related to equity and belonging. And then we began to enhance, I think, our partnerships even more so with DCCBA. So we did try to put our hand in for some joint grant opportunities, and we've also been advancing our internal equity plan. And we have an equity champion team formed as well internally. So I did want to share our equity plan. It is strategic in nature. That's why you see the length that it is. We have a lot of actions. You'll see the status progress is blank, but it's because we're updating that for our September board meeting. But we have a number of items that we are looking at doing and that we will be accomplishing. So we do collect identity-based data in our child welfare service. However, we want to expand that across all of our services. And the reason for that is we really do want to understand better the overrepresentation in our child welfare service, as well as what I'm surmising to be an underrepresentation for good reason in our clinical services. And we also then are going to be doing identity-based data collection with our staff group so that we can use all of that information combined with census data whenever it is released to understand what our workforce looks like vis-a-vis our service recipients and how where some of the gaps are that we need to be really addressing. And we're also doing a lot of work internally. So while we're collecting identity-based data from staff starting in the fall, we are going to be doing the next step around that so what basically component in terms of experience. So based on your positionality and your social location and identity, what does that mean for you internally within our organization? Because we feel that we need to understand that experience really well in order to understand what the experience of some of our service recipients may be. So we have a lot of work that we are undertaking and a lot of very tangible tasks that, that we are really looking forward to implementing. The next part is around education, training. So this goes at all levels of our organization as well. Again, it doesn't matter your position. You can be on our board and you can be on our MIN team, frontline staff, what have you. So we have a lot of activities related to that. Community engagement, we look forward to being able to have the further opportunities in that regard. And we do try really hard to keep ourselves active and engaged with the community. And of course, evaluation and monitoring everything. So, you know, these plans are only as good as whether or not they're actually measured and implemented. So I'd be really happy to come back at any point in time and report progress against our equity action plan as well. And then our strat plan that is not quite fully launched as of yet because we're still polishing our KPIs. We do have specific goals already identified, but our KPIs we're just finishing off on. But I wanted to share the main pillars of it. So the first one is equity and belonging. And we decided on that for the following reasons, given what we know and what we have yet to learn about the impact of oppression, racism, and colonial systems that continue to marginalize groups of people and individuals. DCAPS makes a deep commitment to work towards ensuring that equity-deserving groups feel a sense of belonging, empowerment, and care. And the next one is care and well-being. So given the secondary pandemic impacts, DCAFS must position itself as an agency that champions and supports the care and well-being of its service recipients, DCAFS team members, and community. And the last one is unified and together. Given the increasing complexity of service needs and rapidly changing environments, DCAFS is committed to being a leader in providing integrated care through collaborative internal and external relationships. And again, I know that these are very broad, but trust me, when we get down to the goals and the KPIs, they're really specific and they look a lot like our equity plan with very tangible goals and outcomes. So I think that that brings me to the end of our presentation. Here is our contact information. I'm also happy to put my email in the chat. If anybody ever wanted to connect directly, you're always welcome to do that. And I guess I will turn it back over to you, Alethia, and we'll see if there's any questions or comments.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that, Jennifer. I don't see any questions in the chat yet. Before I turn it over to the group for questions, I have two quick questions. So I know both organizations shared contact information in the event that, you know, someone is in a crisis, not sure who to reach. We pick up the phone, call DCAF or FTP. Is there, you mentioned there was talk about communication. How does that process work? You know, will you automatically redirect to the appropriate place?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, people who answer our phones at DCAF as well as at FTP are really well versed in community supports and services. And so we kind of, while we work together really well and we try to integrate our service provision as much as it makes reasonable sense, we also sort of know what lane we all swim in. So whenever we know that that perhaps a call is coming in for something that's outside of our lane, then we will make sure that we direct people accordingly. And we try hard to do that. You know, in some circumstances, a warm handoff is the best thing. So we try to not just give people a phone number and say, here, call there. Instead, we might call one of our connections at another organization and say, you know, we've got this situation and this person really wants to talk to somebody. I think they could benefit from your service. Can you give them a call with the person's consent? And so we try to do as much of that warm handoff as possible.
Okay, perfect. I know that you touched on some of the different services underneath your mental health component. When it comes to gender identity and sexuality, in particular with or racialized community, oftentimes, and I'll speak from my perspective, from a Black perspective, oftentimes there's a stigma associated with it. And the concern that I have is with the growing Black population in Dufferin County, how do we wrap our arms around individuals, young people who are struggling with their identity and providing them with support? It's not easy for them to reach out and say, hey, I need help, or I'm struggling with this. So how can we, make that process easier for them, essentially, to even have the conversation?
Part of it really begins with, and Lynette or Barb jump in, I don't mean to take it over, but part of it begins with some of the education programs that FTP is providing youth. I think it really starts in those types of settings and conversations, and then creating that availability. But go ahead, Lynette, sorry.
I was just going to say, we're in all the, we're in all the schools in Dufferin County. We're in the Shelburne schools for sure. Depending on the schools, they bring us. Am I coming in and off mute? Can you hear me?
Yes, you're cutting in and out. You're good now. Oh,
I think it's my internet.
Okay.
So I was just going to say, definitely what Jen was saying. We're in the classrooms, we're in the schools. It's great because we're in there 8 sessions, like Barb said. So hopefully youth start to feel a bit of a connection to the staff. And we're really clear when we're in the school that we're not there as counselors or crisis counselors. So we do that bridge. And so, for example, we've had kids disclose in class that really needed DCAF's mental health support. So our staff person has been willing to go to Talking Clinic in the past to help bridge that friendly face. I'll go to the weight room to help you kind of connect and with parents to help foster some of that other bridging. But the conversations are starting in the classrooms. When we're in them, we try and do that for sure. And then, yeah, if there's a child and youth worker in the school, we'll start to try and build connections within the school or with the teacher. But then more often than not, DCAFS really does have great programming in terms of gender identity, and the Glow group's fantastic. And there's not a lot in our community for that. So
yeah, it's we have a lot incredible youth as part of this group, and they have awesome leadership skills. Like, they've put together grant applications, and I don't know if people have seen in Orangeville, the Crystal Queer Project, that they did a mural in Orangeville, and they've taken on lots of speaking engagements and so on. And so some of it is actually just ensuring that we are empowering youth to use their voice and be real leaders in the community, because that's who youth will connect with each other first, probably. So that's a real intentionality we have with our group. And we've actually just been able to expand to have a youth mentor as part of that group officially, who can do some more outreach work as well.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Marcia, do you have any questions? I see the thoughts are percolating there.
Yes, the thoughts are percolating. It's just a way of, I'm not sure how to word this. So I'm going to speak from my background, and Alethia, as you know, I'm hugely embedded in youth justice. And so my question is around the child welfare. So several reports over the years have always indicated that involvement with child welfare is also almost a gateway to children getting involved in the youth justice system. So is there any work that looks at that? In particular, we had a report, the federal government put out a report this last year, and it was just released about a couple of weeks ago, in regards to Black youth in the criminal justice system, and it was engagement in the community. And this is across Canada as well. And one of the pillars that were identified by both parents and youth themselves is involvement in child welfare prior to them becoming involved in the youth justice system. So my question is there any work being done on that end in order as a preventative measure, and what does that look like? Or is there any discussion around that kind of identification? I know it's a loaded question.
Great question. Jennifer, did you want to tackle that one?
Sure. Yeah, thanks for asking about that, Marcia, because I haven't read the most recent study that you were just talking about, but I totally agree with you. There's been all kinds of studies over the years, nationally and provincially, and you're right about the outcomes of those studies. So one thing I would say, yes, in answer to your question, yes, there's a lot of work being done in the child welfare system as a whole with respect to improving outcomes for kids who are connected within that system. And I talked about redesign and some of the pillars of it, and there's a lot of intentionality within those pillars to help change outcomes. But more importantly, I'll just speak sort of locally to our experience, and that is that whenever we focus on building the strength of families and community and supports for kids and parents, they don't come into the child welfare system to start. And if we are involved from a child welfare perspective, it's for shorter, brief periods of time, because we know that people struggle, right? Like, I mean, I've been doing this work. I've been with this agency since 1995, and parents love their kids. Parents want to do well by their kids. And kids want to do well, right? Like, people all want to be successful. And if we use that premise in terms of service and understand that sometimes there are social determinants of health that get in the way, there are things that are outside of people's control that get in the way of their ability to either parent in the way that they want to, or for kids and youth to be able to be engaged with family in a way that they probably want to as well. If we take that kind of approach, then we can build families up and keep people together. When you're talking about outcomes that you were describing, Marcia, you know, where we see that type of outcome is whenever kids have ended up being raised in a system, like in care, in a group home. it's not good, and it will never be good. Like, it's not appropriate, and that's why we have to really shift how we even serve kids and families from the very start. Like, the more, and this is why these kinds of conversations and partnerships with a variety of community partners is so important, because when we think about the work being done like upstream to really help youth in our community, the outcomes they're tenfold, and that's how we avoid challenging outcomes, right? And I think the biggest thing is that we really have to refocus, and we do have a very intentional focus on doing whatever we can to help build supports within families. And I will say that is sometimes challenging, because we are also working with other systems who don't always understand some of the decisions that we make. So, for example, if kids are in a home and there are other systems involved and they don't understand, we will often get the comments of child protection isn't doing anything. Why isn't child protection doing anything? Because it's like one extreme or another. We either shouldn't be involved at all, or we should be apprehending a child. And quite frankly, it's never those extremes. It's usually something in the middle that is that our intervention should be supported, should be focused on supporting families and helping to really build and leverage their strengths, and help to advocate for folks whenever there are systemic issues that are getting in the way, whether we're talking about things like racism, poverty, health matters, mental health, like addictions. Like, our child welfare referrals have shifted so much over the years. It used to be around, injuries, specific injuries, and we still do get kids with injuries, obviously. But the vast majority of situations we are engaged with families really are people who are struggling with things that are well outside of their control, and that they need some support with, and people in their corner, right, so that they can walk their path in a really good way. So I hope that answers your question in terms of where our focus lies internally, but also in terms of Ontario working towards child welfare redesign and really shaking up this system.
Thank you for your answer. I'd love to have a look at that redesign for sure. And I'm glad that you mentioned mental health too, because that's also another gateway, which either lands them in child welfare or in the justice system. So yeah, I did write down your pillars. So yeah, I'd be very interested in having a look at that in order to help me continue to do my work as well. Thank you.
Awesome, great conversation. I see you have your hand up as well. Thanks, Marcia.
Yes, thank you for having me. As a parent in the Dufferin Region County with two boys in the school system, I've had to actively advocate for their needs. They're both on IEPs, but I've had two instances where we were basically fast-tracked into a high-risk system or to DCAF because of a misunderstanding. I don't know if there are any efforts being made to sort of train the teachers or the school system to flag whether or not there's a mental issue or a learning issue or special needs. That would apply, but I find that there's a quickness to, how do you say, escalate or stereotype a child's behavior or any indicator into a bucket that's not necessarily applicable. So I'm wondering if there are any partnerships out there or focus groups where you're seeing such a high representation from our demographic grouping for parents in the community.
Again, you're bringing up an incredibly valid point. And I thank you for your question, because we definitely do receive referrals from a variety of sources where we have had specific training with our central intake staff to really be doing some pushing back and trying to understand further what the true area of concern is if we're talking about a child protection referral, for example. And I don't want to speak to the work, equity work of Upper Grand, that's their, they have been doing some focus on that, and I don't want to speak to that specifically, but I will say that we have been training our central intake staff so that whenever we are getting calls from the community that they're asking a lot of questions and really trying to understand what the true area of concern is, because the reality is, you're 100% right. It's very easy for people to making assumptions. It's very easy for issues such as anti-Black racism to come into play whenever people are making a decision about a referral to child protection. And it's a reality. It does happen. And we are trying to do our best to stop that at the front door wherever we can. And also in recognizing our obligation under legislation to be addressing issues that are brought forward with respect to child well-being and safety. So I hope that somewhat answers your question, but Colby, I'm also happy to talk a little bit more offline, one-to-one, if you have more specific thoughts and you'd be open to a conversation about that on our own as well.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Awesome, great conversation. Do we have any other questions before we close for the night? Jordan or any of the board members, any questions?
Nothing on my end.
Awesome, thank you. I do have one last question. The talk-in clinic, is there a phone-in option? I know you alluded to the fact that 56% of people who have used the service found it helpful enough. But is it just a walk-in option, or is there a phone-in option that people can use as well?
Yeah, if people can't come and walk in and they want to have something by phone instead, we'll definitely be able to make arrangements for that. So if people call our office, then we'll be able to accommodate what you need. We needed to funnel the most people as we could through that talk-in clinic, just so that we could see as many people as possible. But we also know transportation's an issue. So until we have that walk-in clinic back up in Shelburne, that could be a problem. And we also know that now, things have really shifted. So much is offered virtually, and sometimes that's a preference for people. So definitely we are able to accommodate needs in that way.
Okay. I lied. I said my last question was earlier. This is actually my last question. For eating disorders, the last time I checked, I believe the wait list was something ridiculous. Would the talk-in clinic help individuals who have that need as well, or is that a separate stream altogether?
Well, we have an eating disorders bridging program, because you're right, the in-hospital treatment programs, the wait lists are outrageous. They're very long, and people die from eating disorders while they're waiting. And so we do that in partnership with the family health team, because of course there's such a strong medical component as well to an eating disorder. So absolutely people could use the talk-in clinic as a gateway for service, but if an eating disorder is identified, then we would want to make sure that they're being served through that specialty team that has that specific experience. There's just so much involved with physical health components that we wouldn't want to take that on our own without medical advice as well in partnership.
Mm-hmm. Okay, perfect. I think those are all of my questions. I think you've covered pretty much everything. I'm going to do the rounds one last time just to see if there's any hands or questions in the chat. Bella, do you have any questions? No. Okay. Ashton, do you have any questions?
No, actually, no questions. Just to comment that this is really good. I really enjoyed the presentation, and the question raised by all the members here were actually, I got those questions that's already answered. So I'm happy, and thank you for giving this information. Really appreciate it.
Excellent. Thank you for joining. Vincent, I see you're on the line as well. Do you have any questions before I let we close the session for tonight? Okay, so thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Thank you so much, Jennifer, Lynette, and Barbara, for sharing and partnering. That's essentially what we've done tonight, and sharing the great work that you're doing in our community and how we can leverage all of the services. So thank you for taking time on a Tuesday afternoon to spend with us. Before I let everyone go, I would like to remind everyone that we do have another event scheduled this Saturday at 11:15 a.m. that will be held in the Streams Community Hub facility, 305 Colonel Phillips. It is the National Apology for the No. 2 Construction Battalion. If you are not aware of the No. 2 Construction Battalion, they are the first all-Black battalion that served in the Canadian Armed Forces in World War I. And of course, they were subjected to quite a number of different racist acts and barriers that they had to face. And so the government of Canada is doing a formal apology to their descendants and families. So if you are available, please check out our website for the link to pre-register, and hopefully I will see you all Saturday at 11:15. And our second event that is coming up on August 2nd, which is Emancipation Day. So stay tuned for more information on that as well. So thank you, everyone. Did someone have a comment?
Sorry, I didn't have any questions. It was a very well done presentation. I mean, the one question I had was that what we commonly hear in situations is that there may be exposure to drugs and alcohol that women are normally not exposed to, but that was also touched upon somewhere as well. So I think I'm okay. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. And if you have any other thoughts after the session, Bella, feel free to send them my way, and I can redirect them to either FTP or DCAF or both, and they will, respond back accordingly. So thank you for your time, and thank you for joining us. Again, as community leaders, it's important to understand what services are available to our community so that we can all collectively grow and thrive and be happy. So thanks, everyone. Jen, Lynette, Barb, thank you for your time. And everyone, Marcia, Joan, Steve, Amoy, Richard, Bella, Vincent, Asin, thank you so much for taking the time to participate tonight. And Jennifer Brown, thank you as well for sharing. Yeah, Joan, I see you have your camera on. Did you have a question before? Nope, awesome, wonderful. Thank you, everyone. That's a wrap for tonight. Until next time, see you all on Saturday, those of you who have registered.